What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent here to introduce this episode. Very dense episode. Topic being the Lightning Network. Matt Odell and I sat down with Joost Jager, independent Lightning Network developer, focused on security now, building out some security tools for the Lightning Network. Beyond the security aspect, Joost has done a bunch of work on the Lightning Network, so we were very happy to have the ability to speak with him for an hour about his experience working on the Lightning Network, how he views the future of the Lightning Network, and the hurdles it needs to overcome as we head into that future. So I think you guys are really going to like this episode. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at the motherfucking Cash App. Cash App, Cash App, Cash App. Get your money in the trap, dog. Get the Cash App. Stack those sats, send those sats, receive those sats, sell those sats. If you so please, we're saying sats. Because you can make sats the standard in the app. I was trying to think of a rhyming rap there, but your boy Marty, he can write pretty poorly. He can speak into the mic, cannot rap at all. But I can talk to you about stacking sats, sending sats, receiving sats, selling sats, if you so please. Sats. So the standard in the app, if you want to make it the standard. You can also make whole Bitcoins the standard in the app if you want to. I prefer sats. Stacking whole sats over fractions of Bitcoin just feels more powerful when you're doing your daily purchases. Oh, did I mention you could DCA via the Cash App? You can set daily buys, weekly buys, bi-weekly buys if you so please. You can set it and forget it. Have the peace of mind knowing that you are constantly stacking sats on a set cadence so you don't have to FOMO ever. You can DCA in. On top of that, you can stack slivers of stonks if you want to. I know you guys don't like the stonk market. I know the stonk market puked a bit last night when we found out Trump had COVID. I know Bitcoin did as well. But in the Cash App, you can stack sats or slivers of stonks. What is a sliver of a stonk? It's a term that I came up with to help conceptualize the fact that you can buy as little as $1 of your favorite stonk via the Cash App. If it's too expensive, out of your price range, you can buy a sliver as little as $1. Cash App Investing is a subsidiary of Square and member SIPC. As always, make sure you use the code STACKINGSATS when you download the Cash App. That's STACKINGSATS. You're going to get $10, and $10 is going to go to our good friends at Owls Lacrosse. That's Owls Lacrosse. Use a good Stacking Sats. Download the Cash App. Enjoy this episode with Joost Jager. If you're enjoying the podcast in general, this is our 5th episode this week, freaks. Don't say we don't put up for you, all right? We're putting out content. Hopefully it's quality content. Let us know. Give us feedback. If you're liking the content and you feel so compelled to give us a review, particularly on Apple Podcasts, that goes a long way. Helps get the podcast more visible on the platform and gets that quality information out to pre-freaks. Pre-freaks? We have pre-coiners. We call them pre-freaks, that they're not freaks yet. What do we call them? Let's find a name for these people. Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate your continued support. We're hitting some crazy numbers and downloads, so I just want to thank you guys for consistently coming back and listening to my dumb thoughts on Bitcoin. Enjoy. Take
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent here for another interview, joined with Matt Odell this time around. Matt, how are we?
Yo. Happy to be here.
We are sitting down with independent Lightning Network developer Joost Jager, who wrote a enlightening piece last week. I reached out to him and figured we'd have a discussion about what's going on with the Lightning Network. Joost, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you for agreeing to do this. And like I said, you wrote a post last week. You had a a Twitter thread and then a post describing an attack that could be levied against channel operators on the Lightning Network pretty easily. And the other theme of that post is that there are a lot of security flaws that need to be tightened up on the Lightning Network, and that is the effort you are putting forth with your circuit breaker project. But so Matt and I wanted to get you on to just talk about the Lightning Network in general, where it may be lacking as it pertains to security, and then the attack that you outlined specifically. So maybe we can start with the attack, as it's a timely subject, considering your post was dropped last week, and then get into broader security flaws in your view of the Lightning Network at large.
Yeah, sure. So let me say first, this is attack, and attack sounds pretty grave, but with the thing that I described, it's not possible to steal funds from someone else. So it's more like, they also call this a griefing attack. So you can cause grief, but you're not actually losing money. And you could consider it as the equivalent of a DDoS attack on a website. Basically that, but then on a Lightning channel. So with relatively little effort and also cost, it's possible to disable a channel by spamming it with payments. And those payments are not normal payments, but these are payments that take a very long time to complete. So on purpose, you set up a system that allows you to make payments that take a very long time to complete. And all that time, those payments will sit on the channel and block the channel from being used for something else.
And so you described it in your post. The amount of money needed to levy this griefing attack is not a lot. You can do it with very few sats.
Yeah, because the main reason that you can do this for very few sats is that in Lightning, it doesn't cost you anything to send a payment. You only pay when the payment is settled. So payment attempts are free, and that's also a good thing, because you need to find routes, you need to try routes, and if those fail and you would have to pay for all of those, it wouldn't be as compelling as it is now, because you can try, and if you have a lot of time, you can try a lot of routes, try to find the absolutely cheapest route that's there, and once the payment reaches the final destination, it is settled, and only then you're paying all the hops along the route. But this very same property, that allows you to make these payment attempts for free, also allows you to block those channels if you are malicious.
And your focus was particularly on Wumbo channels that are public. So without a major project like Circuit Breaker, how would you attempt to mitigate this attack? Do private channels help anywhere here?
Yeah, so it's not particular to Wumbo channels. You can also execute this. Well, this is also something that has been known for a very long time. I haven't tweeted anything that wasn't known already. I just try to emphasize the significance of it. Mm-hmm. But on a regular channel, you could do the same thing. The only issue is with a Wumbo channel, because you have a lot more capital committed to a Wumbo channel. The grief is more, basically. So if you have a 5 BTC channel and then someone sends those 483 sets in 483 distinct payments, and you can't use your 5 BTC for 2 weeks, that's more painful than it would only be a 0.1 BTC.
It's way more significant of attack in that situation, because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, the Lightning Network is still very immature. It's very young, right? So I would imagine, I haven't done any intense analysis, but I would imagine that an overwhelming majority of the routing capacity is in these very large channels between a very small set of nodes. So you could disrupt the payments across the whole network if you hit a couple of the big channels, right?
Well, you don't really know, because if you've got 2 nodes and they may have one very obvious Wumbo channel between them, it could also be that they have 20 other even larger channels that are private. So if you target this Wumbo channel and you think you can get it down with 483 HLCs, it may not work out, because if they have these shadow channels alongside the Wumbo channel, you need a lot more HLCs to actually block that pathway. And it could even be that one thing to explain is if you create a route, you create a route based on nodes. So you don't select the actual channels, you select the nodes that you want to go through. So if you go from node A to B, node A is allowed to choose whatever channel they like to forward your HLC over. So if you have a 5 BTC Wumbo channel and you have a 0.1 BTC channel as a shadow alongside, it could be that your first 483 HLCs will go through the shadow channel and leave the Wumbo channel unaffected. So it's more subtle than that. And this is also something that you can't observe really. So the public part of the graph is observable, but you don't really know what else is there. Their estimates have been made based on channel force closures to try to figure out how many private channels are there, but it's still a pretty indirect measure. So in the end, we don't really know how big the Lightning Network is at the moment. And what we also don't really know is what the actual velocity is on the network, how many transactions are flowing through those channels. And something to add to that, if you're a node operator, maybe you don't want to advertise your Wumbo channels. Like you can advertise them if you want to show your, like, if it's in your interest to show that you've committed a lot of money to it. But a smarter thing to do could be to just advertise a single channel that's sufficiently large to route the biggest payment that you expect. Let's say I advertise 0.5 BTC, and then I put like 10 Wumbo channels alongside it, just to create more lanes on that payment highway without revealing myself as a potential channel jamming target.
And I know it's hard to calculate and estimates have been made, but just as somebody who's been around the protocol and experimenting with it for some time now, do you have a feeling of the size of the Lightning Network that is unknowable, the private with private channels? Do you think it's larger than most suspect, smaller than most suspect? Comment.
I think, I don't know really. I don't have a feeling, but I do know node operators that intentionally create those shadow channels just to keep, stay invisible, basically. So that does happen. I don't know to what extent. Mm-hmm. And I also expect that over time, more node operators will do this. Like they will realize that it's not really great to advertise that you have so much capacity. So they might start converting channels into private channels. And if you look at a graph explorer, it looks like the Lightning Network is actually shrinking. And maybe people would say the Lightning Network isn't growing, it's shrinking, it's a bad thing. But it could also be a sign of maturity, that people become aware of the risks involved with publishing the existence of a channel, adjusting their policy there. And it could be a bigger success if the network is smaller.
Would you say, in your opinion, that for the average user, the end user, someone who's not running a routing node, they should never have any need for a public channel themselves? They should only have, maybe a couple private channels to some well-connected nodes. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I would agree. If you're not intending to forward any traffic, it's only a disadvantage to publish your channels. If you make a payment yourself, it doesn't matter because you find your own route. And if you're receiving money, then you pass on your private channel identifiers to the sender. The only limitation that currently exists is if you make a key send payment, so a spontaneous payment. At the moment, there is no route hints supported there. So if you want to do that, you need to have a public channel. But this is something that will also be improved over time.
So in the meantime, let's jump into Circuit Breaker in your efforts there. How does it mitigate these attacks? The way I understand it, you're simply allowing a node operator to decide and limit the amount of inbound HTLCs there are at any given point in time.
Yeah, that's basically the idea. So your outbound side, you are controlling this yourself. So the idea is by throttling your inflow of HTLCs, you can mitigate this risk, or at least make the attack more expensive. Because even if you allow only a single HTLC to exist on every channel, and you have 483 channels created by the attacker, they can still send 483 HTLCs. But I think security, it's not a binary thing. So it's all about like making it more costly to execute this. But at the moment, if you just accept channels from anyone with the maximum number of HTLCs allowed, then if the conditions become more adversarial on the network, you might become a victim of this, or you might facilitate this attack towards bigger nodes, because that's also the thing. This channel jamming thing, you can execute it remotely. So if you are connected to an insignificant node, you can still use that to forward your HTLCs to the actual target. And because of the lightning properties, it will also be harder for them to figure out where the attack's coming from, because they need to contact the previous hops, find out where the packet came from, because everything is onion encrypted. So by limiting the number of incoming HLCs, that's indeed like a mitigation. And the simplest way to do this at the moment, at least with LND, is to not install any external software at all, but just set the policy on new channel opens. So there's a configuration flag where you can say, okay, every new channel that's open to me, I only allow 5 HCLCs in parallel to exist there. That's a quick mitigation, but the downside there is it doesn't work for existing channels. And also, once a channel is opened with a low maximum in-flight HCLC parameter, it's not possible to change it anymore. It's an immutable setting. So if you want to change that, you need to close the channel and open a new one.
And then you're basically, the attacker can still denial of service a particular route. They just can't denial of service the channel, right?
How do you mean denial of service a route? Because a route, it's like a...
Because you're limiting a route to, let's say, 5 HTLCs, right?
Well, you only take 5 HLCs from a particular source, meaning that they can only block so many slots on all subsequent channels. And they need many more channels to actually do this.
So they're DDoSing a slot, not a route.
Well, you're DDoSing the route, indeed. But the number of routes, okay, maybe this is like a language thing, but indeed, they're DDoSing the route, and they can only DDoS 5 routes instead of 483.
Right. That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
So this is like kind of a similar situation as what the Tor network is having with their DDoS attacks, right? Because of the onion routing, because you can't really detect what the source is, right? Because historically, the way you stop these denial of services is you just you figure out if there's a malicious source and you just block that source.
Yeah, IP tables, the IP tables, and block the traffic indeed. So that's indeed not possible. And the interesting thing here is also that if you set up these limits, you probably won't want to set them up for all nodes, because there can be like trusted peers. If you are 2 big routing nodes and you have a few big channels between each other, you don't want to apply this limit. But if you don't apply the limit, you are vulnerable to the attack. So you really want to know that your channel peer is applying the same limit to their like untrusted peers. So the thing is that this, in the end, I'm not completely sure how this is going to work out over time, but it seems that some kind of a like web of trust is forming in that way, of nodes that trust each other, that allow high limits, and everybody outside of that will get lower limits. And that's quite significant, because these are restrictions that currently don't exist on the Lightning Network.
So do you think that's a centralization concern? Like, are we going to end up in a situation here where we have, 6 big routing nodes that know each other and agree to this type of green zone, demilitarized zone type of situation?
I don't think it necessarily needs to work out like that, but I'm not sure what's going to happen once this is being implemented.
Yeah, it seems that if that is implemented, there would be a social incentive to respect that web of trust, and so that's what I'm just thinking about in my mind right now. Does the incentive to protect the web of trust exist, and is it large enough to mitigate any attacks between the trusted nodes in that web of trust? I'm thinking out loud here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mechanics will definitely change, and like another potential solution would be to charge money for this. So you're just saying, okay, I trust nobody. If you want to want to have me to forward an HLC, you just have to pay for it, and you're going to pay exactly what it cost me. So if you send an HLC and it remains blocked for 1 day, you're going to pay the missed interest that I could have on my Bitcoin if this wouldn't have happened. And maybe that's another way to do it. And because it's Lightning, it's also easy to create and accept these payments. So maybe that's a more elegant way to solve the issue.
Yeah, financial incentives. This is fascinating stuff, this is why I'm very happy I have you on. We have you on the podcast this week, is because your piece was followed up by another piece on the Lightning Network this week by Antoine Riard. And I just thought the two complemented each other very well, and I think what yourself and Antoine are attempting to do is just to set expectations straight, be as upfront as possible with the limitations that currently exist on the Lightning Network, and then from there attempt to paint a picture of a path forward and an order of operations of how this build out may need to happen going forward, because Antoine referenced in his article this week the sort of push and pull between the conservatism at the protocol level and the he used an analogy, Silicon Valley like startup mentality brought to the Lightning Network, which may not be ready for that type of development at this point in time.
Yeah, well, the same thing also is, you could also recognize the same thing on a feature level. If you're developing for Lightning, you can choose to add more features. Like I also worked or contributed to new features. For example, multipath payments is a new feature. KeySend is a new feature. We've got this whole TLV and TLV shop thing is also a new feature. It's all new features, which is cool because it also makes people more enthusiastic. It also shows unique properties of the system, things that regular payment system couldn't do. It's also important to do this. But on the other end, you've got maybe the not as spectacular projects that further strengthen the foundation of the Lightning Network. So the things that Antoine is talking about, like he's mostly focused on like on-chain security. When transactions go to chain, can we get them converted in time? This is also something that needs to be looked at some point. At some point, like if Lightning becomes the payment system of the world, the environment will be much more adversarial than it currently is. At the moment, not much is happening. Like given that these attacks have been known for such a long time and are not being executed, it just means that the Lightning Network is not a target. So there's the decision: where do you want to work on? Do you want to add more functionality to make it more usable? Or do you want to make it more secure, even though we don't have a security issue at the moment, practically speaking? So this is a hard decision to make. Like, where do you focus your time on? But I think at this stage, also with the bigger channels and more users committing money to it, maybe it wouldn't be bad to shift over a bit of the effort to the foundation side from the new feature side. So that's basically also what I'm try to do by writing those tweets and making it more digestible, because not every user is reading those mailing list posts and not every user is reading all those PDF white papers. So I try to take like the most important parts of it and maybe make a small demo or show some transactions in the Blockchain Explorer to create more awareness of that, and hopefully also create a demand for fixing those security issues to stay ahead of potential bad actors, really. Like I'd rather attack ourselves first before someone else does it.
Yeah, that seems most advantageous to me as well. And so do you think people are too optimistic about Lightning right now? Do you think people are moving too fast? Or do you simply think just attention needs to be diverted to the security side of things?
I don't think people are too optimistic about it, because it is like an amazing invention, really. I've dedicated already 2 years of my life on working on this, and I wouldn't have done this if I wouldn't believe in this. And during all those two years, I see no fundamental issue why this couldn't work. Like there are a lot of issues, like plenty of them, many also unsolved. There's still a lot of work to do, but I totally believe in the whole concept. Just thinking about this, if I would be sitting on a cafe with someone else and I can make an off-chain payment with pen and paper, basically, that's what it is, and it would be enforceable on chain. It's just magically, like now and then I think about this again and I think, is it really possible that math can do this? And apparently math can do this. So it's just amazing. And yeah, so that's very optimistic. And also the fact that there isn't really like another second contender or another project that is as far as Lightning. It also has proven itself over time.
Yeah, it was funny. People took your tweet thread, particularly people working on projects outside of Bitcoin, and claimed it as a death knell of the Lightning Network.
I saw that, yeah. I saw that. It's probably hard to communicate the right thing to everyone.
Right. Well, they obviously didn't read the whole thread where you presented a problem and then, but at the end of the thread, presented a solution in the form of circuit breaker. It highlights the inability of some reading attention spans that we have in this space.
Yeah, I also wouldn't want to say that circuit breaker is the solution to everything. Also, if you look at it, it's just a tiny project at the moment. It's just it's basically a front end to LND's HCLC interception API. So it's nothing really special. But I just wanted to get the thinking going around this. Like a thing like circuit breaker, do we need it? Do we want to install it already now, or do we want to wait until something happens? I think it's just important to get the thinking started.
Yeah, Matt, do you want to step in there?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you know way more than us, that it seems like the single best improvement routing nodes can make are these shadow private channels, right?
Oh, I'm not sure if it's the single most important thing they can do, but it's an easy thing to make it better. There's no downsides to this. The only reason why you want to publish this Wumbo channel of 5 BTC is if you actually want to accept 5 BTC sized payments, but that seems
right.
not. Yeah,
and that won't even be like when we get multi-part payments or more throughout the network, then that won't even be as big of an issue, right?
That's also the case. You could even make a decoy channel, just make a 0.16 channel always, just to show that the connection is open, and leave all the rest hidden. Like, I'm sure if everybody would do this, like the routing capabilities would hardly be would be hardly any effect on the routing capabilities of the network, but the total locked value would shrink dramatically.
Yeah, so we've already come to the conclusion that for end users, except for key send, they should basically only be using private channels if they're not routing. And then for routing nodes, dedicated routing nodes, the majority of their capacity should probably be in private channels, right? Yeah. So a successful Lightning network, in your opinion, it's going to be like an iceberg. The overwhelming majority of capacity is going to be in private channels, not public.
Yeah, definitely. And there's another reason why you want to have private channels. It is because it makes pathfinding much easier, because now you've got all these public channels that don't really serve a purpose for routing, but they are still explored when you send a payment. So another thing that I've been working on last year is to try to penalize nodes that advertise public channels that are not functional. And the idea was, if we penalize those nodes and we skip them for the next payment, then they will see their routing revenue go down. And if that's the case, they might choose to close or convert those channels into private. So create pressure from the senders on routing nodes to only advertise the channels that are actually usable. And if this would happen, this is another reason why the visible graph would shrink. And this speeds up finding the path. It's also better for mobile clients, for example, that have limited resources. But it's pretty weird, because people always look at these 1ML stats and they see, there's 1,000 BTC committed now. And last year it was also 1,000, so nothing's happening. It's just a bad metric.
Yeah, it's a stat that is used to throw a lot of FUD at the Lightning Network. There's more wrap BTC on Ethereum than the Lightning Network. And it's hard to get through to people that they're only looking at public channels. But bringing this back to multipath payments and Wumbo, focusing on the benefits of the combination of those two upgrades, particularly, I believe Breeze Wallet wrote a post about a month ago at this point describing how the combination of MPPs and Wumbo channels will create a better UX while increasing liquidity. I believe they described it as MPPs have an additive property to liquidity and flow on the network that is really made the user experience significantly better, or will make the user experience significantly better when it's more widespread.
Yeah, that multi-path payments are definitely a very good user experience improvement, because it's always difficult to explain on Lightning what's your balance. Like, you can sum up all the channel balances that you have, but this is not really the size of payment that you can make. Like, you can only make a payment smaller than the size of your largest channel. And it's just hard to explain that. And with MPP, with an ideal MPP, we're not there yet because the routing algorithm isn't that sophisticated. But with an ideal MPP, you would be able to combine all the balance that you have in those channels and then use it to settle a single payment at the recipient. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, if you're going to continue.
Yeah. So, and in a way, it also, there's less need for Wumbo channels, because if you can combine channels, you don't need a Wumbo channel anymore to make a large payment. Like, there are other reasons why you want to have Wumbo channels, but MPP in a way also reduces the need for Wumbo channels.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And going back to the routing algorithm, that's another thing that the Breeze team mentioned that actually was just very interesting to me. There's people are talking about applying something like a Fibonacci sequence to channel routes, or so what are the options right now for the routing algorithm? One is just to try to send actually, I'm not even going to describe it, you know it better than me.
Yeah, well, routing algorithm is very, very difficult for multipath because you have so little information. You don't know, you know the capacities of the channel, but you don't know what the balances are. So what you're doing is you're trying to complete the payment, and while you're doing this, you're learning something about channel balances, because if a particular part doesn't reach the destination, you get back to failure. You know, okay, 1 million through that channel, that's not possible. But there might be some of those shards that have already arrived, from which you're not getting feedback, because that's the property of Lightning at the moment. If your shard arrives and the recipient is still waiting for the other shards to arrive, there's no feedback. So it could also be that the shard is stuck. So with that very limited information, you need to decide, okay, what am I going to try next? And also, you can't try too many things at the same time, because then those HFCs will interfere with each other and they might make each other fail, while in reality, if you would them do them sequentially, there would be enough balance on those routes. So there's a lot of factors and also timing factors involved to actually make this optimal. So I can only speak for what's happening in LND at the moment. And there we've implemented something that's relatively simple, just to get it started, to show that multipath payments can happen. But that doesn't mean that if you have 3 channels with a total capacity of 1 BTC, that you can also make a payment of exactly 1 BTC, because the algorithm needs to try out options, and at some point you also run out of time. Like, you can't try all options. So this is an area that still needs like a lot of research to figure out what's the best way to do this multipath route planning.
That's fascinating. Is it fun working on this stuff as a intellectual, like trying to figure out these hard problems?
Oh, definitely. Lightning is the most challenging thing that I've worked on.
What were you doing before Lightning?
I was doing also routing, but then for ships. So ships, their routes need to be optimized according to the weather predictions. Heavily influences like the safety of the crew, and also the fuel consumption. So it was, in a way, a related optimization problem.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So are you able to apply anything that you used in that lifetime to the Lightning Network?
Not really. The Lightning Network is pretty special. Like, basic pathfinding is the same, but the constraints are very, very different.
Figuring out logistics for a while now. Is that what draw you to the Lightning Network? It's like, hey, this is a harder...
No. What drew me to the Lightning Network is Bitcoin. And I wanted to, after working on all different kinds of projects at the site, I'm only watching Twitter and reading about Bitcoin. I'm not doing anything myself. I need to make a decision now. Am I going to contribute seriously, or do I keep watching all the time? So then the contract that I was on at that moment, I didn't extend that. And then I took sort of a crypto sabbatical, let's call it like that. So I used 3 months just to become an open source developer. And I had my eye on Lightning already, on LND specifically. And then within LND, I was quite overwhelmed with like the number of lines of code, it's very complex, like Lightning in general, and also to understand the code base is just hard. Like that's, even after 2 years, there's like whole parts of the code base that I never touched and still don't really know how it works. So I was looking, okay, where can it start to contribute? And there were a couple of issues around routing then. So then I thought, okay, maybe I should look at the routing part, because at least there's some familiarity in that for me. So yeah, that's why I started to work on routing in Lightning.
Had you contributed to open source before Lightning, or is this your first foray?
No, never before.
How's that been comparing it to your prior life, where I assume you had a product manager and a team dictating what to work on? Like, how is this broad canvas differ to that? The interaction with the open source community, any different?
I think it's very good. Like, there you get so much direct feedback from users, like users commenting on pull requests, even submitting pull requests, creating issues that you see. Like in the companies that I worked before, there was like all like different departments in between, like filtering stuff, and it was much more indirect. Like you didn't really know who you were doing all these things for, because you didn't know those people. And this is quite different. And also, as a developer, it's nice that your work is public, so you can always show what you've done. You can show the things that you found in reviews, like your communication style, because that's also pretty important in software development, like the way you communicate with colleagues, with users. Yeah, so a lot of pluses.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to have you here. You're getting some user feedback right now. We're big fans of the Lightning Network, and we were actually huge fans of another project you work on. I forget what it's called. Whatsat. Was it Whatsat?
Yeah, Whatsat. Yeah.
Yeah, Whatsat. So sending messages over Lightning Network. This is infinitely fascinating to me. But you were describing to us before we hit record that it actually sort of contradicts the solution you presented in Circuit Breaker.
Yeah, it's indeed interesting, because so with Whatsat, what you're doing is you're sending these tiny payments, and a message is attached to them, and you can go do this back and forth. But the thing is with these tiny payments is that if you are a routing node and you have these tiny payments on your channel and you need to force close the channel, it can get very expensive. I've published another tweet, I think, was it last week or maybe Monday? I think Monday, where I show what the transaction looks like. So if you have a channel and you have 483 small-ish HTLCs on them, I don't say one set, but let's say 10,000 sets, to this transaction, it becomes huge. And also the fee on the transaction becomes huge. So it could be the case that over time, it turns out that for Lightning to work, there is a minimum payment size that we want to have. So that's the contradictory part to Whatsat.
Yeah, push-pull. Whatsat seems very, like, to me, Whatsat, just having a distributed messaging protocol on Lightning, it theoretically cannot be censored, was just an incredible idea. And people have put it into practice. Like, I have the Sphinx app on my phone and a couple others. What's the one that John Contrell made?
Juggernaut.
Yeah, I've played around with that too. So it's been cool to see people run with the idea that you put out there and actually build products that work.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. And also, I think there's also other ways to create messaging on Lightning without using one HTLC per message. Because another model could be that we say, okay, the message relaying, we don't do this with Lightning, but we just take our own out-of-band channel for that. But those nodes still need to pay each other. So it's more like prepaid. So one node pays the other node 10K sets to relay 10K messages. And then a counter starts ticking. And maybe if messages flow in both ways, the balance will go back to the other side again. So you make the billing a bit more loose from the message passing itself. And that could also be a way to get around this whole thing that every message is an HTLC, and maybe the HTLC shows up on chain and then it becomes expensive. Lightning, it's so like, you can make these payments between machines so frictionless. Like it really opens up a lot of possibilities also for this. So perhaps like a second version of Whatsat would be like with this style of billing model.
Yeah, and you could also use and still in that model, you could easily just use the pub key for encryption, Web of Trust.
You can you can still do the exact same things, but you just don't put it in a Bitcoin transaction. That's the only thing you don't do.
I mean, that makes more sense to me, just on an external. It just seems cleaner, just in general.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and again, we are very bullish on the Lightning Network, and what excites me, something that you just touched on, is things like LSAT and LN URL auth and the fixing of the 402 error on the web. Like the thought that Bitcoin via the Lightning Network can actually fill in a puzzle piece that's been missing on the internet for decades is incredible. And again, it seems like a very worthwhile project to attempt to tackle. Even if it may be unsuccessful in the long run, I think trying to solve these hard problems is fun.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, the 402 payment requirement. It's amazing that they figured out that code already back then. I'd never used it. It's pretty cool.
It's almost like it was just waiting for Bitcoin to come along.
Yeah, somebody knew.
Right. And so let's envision a future where a lot of these security flaws that currently exist are figured out. Like, what do you think the overall potential for the Lightning Network is in the long run? And how will it change our lives, even beyond a simple payments infrastructure?
Very, very difficult question. Like, what's the future going to look like? Yeah, there are some clues like this. It's like full integration in your browser, like everything connected together. It's totally frictionless. Pay buttons, like for every web shop that you visit. Yeah, that sounds nice to me. But there's also like the interaction with Bitcoin as a savings technology. That could also strengthen the bond between on-chain and off-chain. Like if everybody owns on-chain Bitcoins, then it also becomes more logical to actually use Lightning to spend them. So, yeah, perhaps the gaming use case also seems to become more important. Like, I wouldn't really be able to set out a future like how this is exactly going to look.
Yeah, one of my big Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of wanted to flip it on its head. Like, what are your biggest concerns about Lightning besides this HTLC DOS, denial of service issue?
Yeah. So in general, I don't have any fundamental concerns. Like there's all these security things that needs to be fixed. Like also in the UX, in the end, you don't really want to know that the channel exists. You want everything to be transparent. Just use it as a regular wallet. I can send, I can receive. Everything happens under the hood, and it's really a lot that needs to happen under the hood, and it all needs to be automated, like in a way that also makes it work as the user expects. So work. But yeah, fundamentally, the only thing I would think, like if everybody needs to have a channel on the earth, how much chain space is going to cost? So is that going to work in the end? Like this is a stage we're very far away from. And I also don't want to dismiss any idea now because because there is a chance that it wouldn't be able to serve everyone on the planet. Like Lightning is already like an order of magnitude difference in scalability than layer one. But I do wonder sometimes what's it going to look like. But probably there will be like some custodial things happening again, like people keeping small money on a service that maintains the channels. It is already happening now. So that might also be a way out for that. But yeah, indeed, if opening a channel costs you $1,000, then it's not for everyone anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing, a lot of usage of Lightning right now is custodial. And I mean, as far as UX and feature-wise, you can do a lot more if you go that custodial route. So I kind of wonder if there will be a balance there. I mean, I know historically as Bitcoiners and and me in particular, like not your keys, not your coins, 100%. But at the same time, I start to see myself wander. Today someone showed me this project CoinOS .io, and it's this combined wallet that is on-chain, Lightning, and Liquid all together. Like you can receive on any of those, and you can send on any of those, but it's custodial.
It's a web wallet too, right?
Yeah, but it could be run through Tor, and like anybody can run it. So like there's some interesting models there where like you're kind of distributing trust even though it's custodial. The UX is completely different. So I'm kind of curious how that all plays out.
I thought you could point it at your own server.
Yeah, you could run your own server. You could use it non-custodial. You could use it custodial. You could run it custodial for other people, right? There's like all these different... And then people have talked about stuff like Chami and eCash and stuff where it's it's theoretically perfectly private but custodial. There's like all these different little custodial things you could do. And I don't know if that's a trust model we want to explore, but the nice thing about Bitcoin is it is permissionless, so people can if they want.
Yeah, I'd say that if we manage to create a new financial system that has a backbone that's non-custodial and decentralized, I think that's already quite an accomplishment. And then if there are like numerous parties that offer custodial services, it's probably going to happen anyway. But to decentralize the backbone, that would already be amazing.
Yeah, this may be a little controversial, but you also have to take into consideration too, like the incentive for people who want to make transactions that other people don't want them to make may be high enough that they're willing to pay higher fees on chain to open up channels and facilitate what others would deem as nefarious activities. So that could actually protect the Lightning in the long run, as we see it in the traditional financial system. The drug cartels and kleptocrats and corrupt people around the world are able to pay to get their transactions pushed through the banking system, which is supposed to be preventing those.
So you mean that can happen or that can't happen in Lightning?
No, it can happen. I think it will happen.
Yeah. If it becomes very expensive to run a node, then you will get those issues probably. But for me, these are all worries like for later. Like if we get to that stage, we're so successful already. It's
It's a good problem to have.
So I actually have two more topics that I know I want to cover while we have you here. The first one is watchtowers. Eye of Satoshi, the first proper release came out today. The first stable release came out today, which I think is the first proper watchtower. This is big news, right? We've been talking about watchtowers for years now.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with watchtowers. Of course, I know what they are, roughly how they work. There's Watchtower in LND as well, but it's probably not the same as Eye of Satoshi. I don't really know what they have, so I wouldn't be able to comment much on that.
Matt's got dogs. He's shutting out of the room right now. Yeah, watchtowers. I mean, it's something people have been talking about for a while.
Well, they are important. They are definitely important to have, and also. It's the interesting thing about it is that you don't really know if someone is using a watchtower. So just the fact that there is a watchtower implementation available already has a deterrent effect probably on anyone trying to breach your channel, because you never know if somebody's running those watchtowers. So even without nobody running the watchtowers, it still has effect to just have the code out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm most excited about, is just having them out there. I just want, the capability being there so the malicious actors are worried about it and maybe they won't make their move.
Yeah. It also doesn't seem to happen that much at these channel breaches. It's pretty rare.
Yeah, why? I'm surprised. I mean, I've been my favorite way of learning and understanding things is just dive in head first, and I'm just surprised that my channels haven't been getting attacked. I mean, I'm gonna knock on wood, but I haven't been using watchtowers.
Well, it's game theory, isn't it? Like they don't know that you don't use watchtowers. Well, now everybody knows.
Well,
but
now
hey,
that I started using watchtowers right before this episode. I'm just talking about before that.
That's good to know.
Previously.
That's good to know. But yeah, I guess the case is like if you breach and you lose, you lose the full channel balance. So there's a penalty. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. That is a pretty big penalty.
And
So I mean,
also, given that
go
other
on.
attacks aren't happening either, it's probably like the whole friendly thing still being the case in Lightning.
Yeah, it kind of bothers me. It's like the calm before the storm that there's like no real attacks that have been happening that have been reported.
Yeah, I've also been like advocating a little bit for like the chaos monkey idea. So having some kind of a node that randomly does things that it can do, just to keep ourselves tuned to those possibilities.
Yeah, it's like a white hat hacker. Like I'd like to see some
like a white hat hacker. The
penetration
only
tests.
thing is if you have like a regular company and you hire a penetration tester, it's all right because they're going to attack you. But on the Lightning Network, you can say, okay, I'm going to pay someone to attack me, but you might be at the same time be attacking other nodes as well, like because you use the network, maybe you jam the network. So it's a bit harder. Like you can't just decide this on your own sometimes and ask someone to hack you. So.
And how effective is attempting to test out these attacks on a test net? How effective is that, if at all?
Yeah, you can get it done on the testnet. Like the problem with testnet is always the fee estimation. Like the blocks are never really full, and a lot of these attacks have to do with fees and congestions. So you would need to figure out a way to simulate that. But I think if you do it on testnet, it doesn't really contribute to making it important, because only when it happens on mainnet it hurts, and then something might be happening. Like that these attacks exist and that they work, that is clear. Like it's not nonsense what's written in those papers. It's just it doesn't really happen. So you need to decide, prepare for something that doesn't happen, or do something else that I need today.
Yeah, no, because there's been attacks that have been able to drain channels, correct? That have been made public within the last year.
Well, there are still a lot of things that you can do. Like the whole reason that you have anchor channels is also so this new commitment format with anchors. The whole reason that you have this is to patch a hole that was there. Like if you're stuck with a commitment transaction that is pre-signed and the fee is not high enough, and you publish it to chain if you need to, and the fee market went up since it was signed, it's not getting confirmed, and then you might reach the deadline of your HCLC, and once you pass the deadline, both parties can claim the HLC, the race exists, so that might make you lose money. So it's not that nothing exists at the moment.
Yeah.
But for all these things, there's also trade-off with all these things. Like some of these attacks also require significant investment, for example, in setting up channels. And also it may be dependent on the fee market conditions, which you don't really know. So it's also not easy to do those attacks. You'll need to write custom software to do it, and then you need to calculate what your odds are of actually succeeding. So it's a lot of work there. It's, as someone on Twitter said as well, it's probably easier just to scam somebody out of their seat and
yeah, I mean,
a millionaire like that.
We saw some guy lost 1,400 Bitcoin in his Electrum hot wallet, right? That's larger than the public capacity of Lightning. So
yeah, it's a lot easier.
You just fish them with a link.
So this is another reason to keep the public capacity down.
Fair. Good. That's a good point.
Make it less of a honeypot.
Yeah, Lightning is not a success. Just stay away from it.
Right.
I like that line of reasoning. My other question is also probably something that, so you said you weren't like that in tune with watchtowers. I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on Liquid.
Oh, no, not at all. Liquid, I know nothing about that really.
Fair enough.
It's really impossible. There are so many things going on, and even within the Lightning domain, there's a lot I can't keep up with. So it's, yeah, you just need to choose what you want to work on.
Yeah.
Very fair.
Well, I have another question, particularly around the multiple implementations. You've mentioned you've been focused on L&D specifically, and this is a question I like to pose to Lightning developers whenever I have them on the podcast, is what are your thoughts on the different implementations, how they interact, and how they may evolve going forward together?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely good that we have multiple implementations. Like, for example, with the new Anchor commitment format, Other implementations also start implementing this. We find inconsistencies and work those out. Just the fact that we all try to remain interoperable, it just makes the whole thing more robust. Like there's also timing issues that might not show up if you have two of the same implementations communicating, and with two different implementations, they do show up. So it's very valuable in that sense. And also it seems that the different implementations have different things that they find important to work on. Something like anchor channels is like universally supported, but as a project team, you can also decide on what your own priorities are within that and influence each other. Like with MPP, for example, I believe all implementations have a different algorithm to do MPP. So it's very interesting to look at each other's approach and see if you can come up with something better. So there are more than 3 implementations, but I'm talking about like the 3 ones that are mostly in production at the moment.
Yeah, it's been fun watching them grow alongside each other. And I guess a follow-on question here would be like, how hard is it to maintain interoperability? How much communication is going on between the differing implementation teams?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of communication. Like we've got this bi-weekly, is that every 2 weeks? No, that's twice a week, right?
No, it's both. It's confusing part of English. It could be either.
Every 2 weeks, we have this IRC meeting and we chat about issues that exist, and they are often about interoperability. Like some things don't need to be discussed because every implementation can decide on their own. And then we've got these PRs with spec changes. The spec repository itself is pretty cool. Like there's one repository that describes the Lightning spec. And there's a lot of like very lengthy discussions. You need to have a lot of patience in that process. But in the end, a lot of good things come up as well, like things that you haven't thought about. I think in general, like humans are just not smart enough for software development. It's always a fight against the complexity. So you need to do whatever you can to make sure you minimize the number of bugs that you have, and getting a lot of eyes on something. It's just very, very valuable. So what I've experienced from this whole cooperation process, I find it pretty good.
Nice. And looping back to your comment earlier that when you first approached Lightning, L&D specifically, it had so many lines of code. Is the protocol in that implementation working to reduce the overall lines of code? Is that not a focus? Is it more refining right now or additive?
It's still additive, because there are still a lot of things that need to be that are missing, especially the automation part, making sure that you don't need to worry about anything. You just start up your node. Maybe you can even stake some Bitcoins. I just throw some Bitcoins at it and it will open channels for me and it will earn routing revenues, everything transparently. Like we are far from that stage, but it could happen at some point. And I think similar discussions happen in Bitcoin Core, is that a split will be made between like the more core functionality, like just maintaining the security of your channels, and functionality that's more in the periphery, and split that, make 2 projects out of it. But like the total code base will still be growing, but at least it becomes more manageable. But I don't think shrinking is really an option. Like if you're lucky, you may be able to delete some code, perhaps with a new commitment format or different layer 1 possibilities. There might be something that can be deleted, but in general, I don't think it won't decrease much.
Interesting. Thank you for these insights, Joost. And thank you for your hard work and vocalization of everything that's going on in the Lightning Network. Again, I want the Lightning Network to succeed, and knowing that people as smart as you are working on it gives me some comfort at the end of the day. And Matt's got a question here.
Yeah.
So a lot of us are kind of hoping that Lightning becomes or like plays a major part in being a user-friendly option for Bitcoiners to have, relatively decent transactional privacy with their usage of Bitcoin. Do you think that these beliefs are founded? Like in reality, do you think that this could be a way for us to achieve some level of privacy for the end user, where they don't really have to know like all the specifics?
Yeah, well, there is a level of privacy by default, but you still need to know like its limitations. Like if I make a payment to you through Marty, and you ask Marty, where did the HLC come from, and he tells you it came from me, then at least you know something. Like I could not be like the sender, but just relaying. But it's not that it's impossible to figure out where it came from. So
I guess to reword my question, because we've talked about that a lot on the podcast, and I absolutely agree. I think part of the reason is that it improves privacy so much for Bitcoiners is just because the privacy guarantees of on-chain Bitcoin they're so low to begin with. I guess what my question really is you've been in the weeds in Lightning development. Do you think that improving like accessible privacy for Bitcoiners is a goal that is shared among a lot of Lightning developers?
I think so. This is a theme that comes up quite often. And if you talk about like new changes to the spec, the whole privacy thing, it comes up often. Like, for example, we talked about amount randomization to like never send round amounts, but add a bit of noise. With NPP, don't split in 1 + 1 BTC, but make it 0.3525 and the remainder. So yeah, but
awesome.
Maybe in the future, like suppose routing nodes need to go and do KYC. Let's suppose that's the future. Then like all those routing nodes will keep logs of HLCs, where they came from, where they went through, and then you don't have the privacy anymore. So
it can get pretty messy pretty quickly.
Yeah. So it's not like with the the coin joins where there's like mathematical properties that make it impossible to figure out where it's what input went to what output. Like with Lightning Network, it's different. But it's also a matter of like how hard is it, and how much privacy do you need for whatever you are buying. Like there's probably also limits to what information someone can obtain. So
yeah, and how hard would it be to enforce that regulation? How expensive would it be?
And like where the priorities are, right? Like I'm thinking of things like with multi-part payments and like enforcing more hops, right? Even something as simple as enforcing more hops or like looking for routes that have more hops rather than less hops could be like little things like that, little priority things that might result in higher transaction fees, but they will result in better privacy guarantees.
Yeah, that's a lever that we currently really don't have. We can't set like a minimum hop length, a minimum route length, but from a privacy perspective, that would be good.
It's a good point, Matthew. I never thought of that. Makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole.
Well, Joost, again, I appreciate your time. Do you have any parting notes, anything you want to get off your chest before we wrap up here that you think the freaks should know?
I'm just interested to hear any feedback like on the security themes that I try to shine a light on, and also looking for feedback on this whole circuit breaker idea, because circuit breaker is one approach to tackle this, but there's also other ways to tackle this. So in general, any feedback about security is very welcome.
Awesome. Where can we find you? Whether on Twitter, GitHub, anywhere that...
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and GitHub. That's it indeed. So it's Joost Jager on Twitter, and Joost Jager is probably very hard to spell this. Maybe you have show notes or something that you can put it in.
Yes, we'll put it in the show notes, definitely.
But I'll spell the Twitter for the freaks. It's JOOSTJGR on Twitter.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Joost, I hope you have an incredible rest of your evening. I know it's getting late where you are. Matt, do you have anything to wrap up with?
No, just I truly appreciate you, and thank you for all the work you're doing to improve Lightning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Very enjoyable conversation.
Yes, I'm very excited to get this out to the freaks. I think this is going to be very educational for everybody who's interested in Lightning. That's all we got this week, freaks. Peace and love.